money. Good morning. Thank you all for having me today. Bobby, thank you very much for the invite. Thank you to the Corona Chamber. Thank you to the Eagle Gun Golf Course. A couple months ago, I actually had the bright idea of buying. I'm a member here of the Players Club, and I bought a couple dozen golf balls that were personalized, thinking I was going to, advertise my name and my website. And on the golf bar, I wrote, "Change your life, JaMarRBrown.com." And within about a month, I lost every single golf ball out on the Eagle Gun Golf Course. So if any of you are out there playing golf and happen to come across a golf ball, please give it back to me because they're pretty expensive. And one more story about that. I was out there playing recently, and I was playing with this gentleman, and I have to apologize to Lahia because I called her Legia accidentally, and I'm very sensitive about my name because people tend to call me Lamar and Jamal all the time, but it's JaMarr. So I'm out there playing golf, and I'm talking to this gentleman, and I normally don't say my name because it gets turned into something else. So I usually say I'm JB. And so we're talking. For some reason, I said my name is JaMarr. He goes, "Oh, JaMarr Brown?" I said, "Yeah, somebody recognizes me." He pulls out my golf ball, and he says, "It shouldn't read change your life. It should read change your golf swing." So with that said, what are we going to talk about today? And I was talking to Bobby and Lahia. We're talking about things I could talk about. Somebody mentioned Common Core standards. As a director of consulting for my business, I interview a lot of business owners, CEOs, a lot of professionals about the economy and business and what's changing. And I was going through all these things I could talk about. And finally they said, "JaMarr, the members want to know how to make money. So let's not get into all that other stuff." So I said, okay, let me talk to you about some of the changes in the environment from a sales and management perspective that can be found in the current literature and books, as well as get beyond the theoretical aspects of how to make money in sales and business and management to some reality. So what I'd like to do today is talk about some of those changes in business with some of the books that I recommend all of you read if you haven't read yet, because they really talk about the change in psyche in today's business. And one last point, I feel like I'm making a lot of jokes this morning, but this is true. People ask me in my bio, I've been in business for 20 years, 17 years in the healthcare industry, Allergan Pharmaceuticals, and they said, "Well, why do you look so young?" And I said, "Well, I did work for Allergan Pharmaceuticals, makers of Botox and Juvederm, and they used to hand that stuff out like candy back in the day." But anyway, so these are a couple of the books that I recommend that you, if you haven't looked at, they're really important to pay attention to because they're talking about how business is changing in today's market. The first one is called The Happiness Advantage, and this book is by Sean Aker, who's a Harvard professor, and the basic premise of the book is that people don't become happy after they're successful. They are happy first, and that drives their success. And there's a number of studies and articles in this book about that concept. So keep that in mind. The second one is the Harvard Business Review, and they did a whole story on how to create a culture of excellence. So for those of you that are small business owners, any small business owners in the room? Okay? There's a big push right now about the culture of your organization because it has been found that the culture of your organization drives what? It drives the experience of your employees, which drives what? The experience of your customers. And so if your culture isn't conducive to the success you want to produce in your business, you might want to look at that. Another book is called Conscious Capitalism. And we all know what capitalism means. And now there's this major push right now looking at, because the economy has changed so much, because people are no longer staying in jobs for 10, 20, 30 years, they're changing jobs every 2 to 3 years. It's how do we make money in a conscientious way, whether it's green technology, whether it's solar power. And so these are some of the things that people are looking for to see if your business provides if they want to do business with you. Another book is called 5 Minds of the Future. This is a very intense read, but it talks about the 5 ways of thinking that are needed in terms of in order to be successful in the future. And one of the minds is called the synthesizing mind, which talks about how do we take all the data that we receive every single day with our iPhones and our internet and everything else, and how do we break it down to make it very simple for our customers to understand. Another book is called Firms of Endearment. And this book is really important because it talks about looking at purpose and passion over profit. Purpose and passion over profit. And how can you relate the fact that your company either does that or doesn't, and your employees either experience that or don't experience that in terms of the success of your business. And the last book is a shameless plug for my children's book, You're Ugly. And it's an anti-bullying children's book, which really deals with these other books because it's all about how do we teach children how to think differently so that they're not affected by verbal bullying. And it guides parents in terms of how do you have that conversation with your child in order to build confidence and self-esteem. So what do all these books have in common? What they have in common is it's all a matter of a new way of thinking in today's environment, a new way of understanding what customers and people are looking for. And things like vision and passion and purpose are becoming a much more bigger concept in business today that people are looking for. So we're going to talk about, real briefly, sales, management, and a brief point around creating a culture of excellence in the short amount of time that I have today to be with all of you. So the first question I ask people that I work with is, are you happy with your current results? You don't have to raise your hands on that. It's just something to think about. Are you happy with your current results? That's the first question I ask, because if you're happy with your current results, then there's no need to do anything differently, right? But if you say, you know what, my sales numbers are okay, they could be better. I'm a manager and I have a team that I'm managing, and I think that they are doing okay, but I don't know if I'm doing a good enough job in terms of inspiring them. Or if you're a small business owner and you're saying that my culture could use a tune-up, then this is for you. So here's the reality of our current situation. And there's two equations I'm going to share with you which are really important to think about. Our past thoughts plus our past behaviors equal our current results. Pretty basic, right? Our past thoughts plus our past behaviors equals our current results. So how do we change the direction of our business? How do we inspire people to buy more of our products? How do we get our employees more engaged? And this is how we do it. I call it the success equation. And it's basically this: your current thoughts today, because the only way to affect the future is what? By what you do today. So your current thoughts combined with your current behaviors equals what? Your future results. So let's talk about what are some of these changes in mindsets about sales or about management, about the culture of your business that can lead you to a different result. And we don't have a lot of time today, and usually I do these programs for a weekend, a full day, half day, but this is only I think I have 10 minutes left, so I'm going to make it pretty quick. All right? So the first one is about sales. And the first book I wrote is called What's Your Sales Story? And as Jerry mentioned, I was at Allergan Pharmaceuticals, went to Whittier College, student body president, dean's list. I thought I was God's gift to sales. I get out, get hired by Allergan Pharmaceuticals as a full-time sales rep. I told everyone I was going to be salesperson of the year because I was that cocky and had that much bravado back in the day. And after 2 years, I found myself in front of my boss with him telling me, JaMarr, you're burned out. You're not cut out for sales. I think you should look for something different. As a matter of fact, if you sign this piece of paper, well, not if you sign it, when you sign this piece of paper, it is a written warning saying that if you don't improve your sales results, you're going to get fired. And here I am at 21, 22 years old thinking, how can I be burned out at 21? But that's exactly what my manager told me. And at that point, you have to think about yourself. And some of you may be in a situation where what you thought you were going to have, what you thought you were going to be, what you thought you were going to sell is not reality. And you might find yourself thinking to yourself, there has to be a different way to become successful. And at that point, you have a choice to make. And what's the definition of insanity? Over and over again, expecting a different result. And I knew if I kept, and my result would have been, you're out of this company, right? So I decided to change some things. And the books that I referenced earlier, ironically, this is 15 years ago, are coming back full circle about the sales process today. The first thing is, which is pretty straightforward, taking responsibility for your results. Taking responsibility, taking full accountability, and there's a number of books about accountability for your current situation. And that's very difficult because it's something called the ego. And the ego tells you what? When you're not doing well, what does the ego tell you? It's somebody else's fault. My boss hated me, the company, I don't want to use the language I used back then, but the company had its issues and the compensation plan wasn't right, and my customers just didn't understand the way I was talking to them, and all these things. So it's always somebody else's fault. Then on the flip side, for those of you that are in business that are doing well, and it always scares me more when I work with companies that are successful because of the other part of the ego, which is when you're doing well, what happens? It says, I've arrived. I've made it. You don't have to do anything differently. And Kaizen, for those of you that know what Kaizen means, it means continuous improvement. And what happens oftentimes when you are successful, you stop doing the things that help you to become successful. So that was the first thing that changed. The second thing that changed is a really important concept. People buy the experience, not the product. The bottom line is people did not like working with me. People did not like my approach because at the time I thought sales was all about making money, getting promoted, and becoming this flashy salesperson. And that's how I treated people. And they would throw me out of their offices many times. And the book goes through all these stories. And so there's a funny thing I saw on Instagram last night. It read, some people are like clouds. When they leave, everyone's happy. So the question is, what experience are people having with you? When you're networking at this function, what experience are you providing for people? Do you make people feel good about their interactions with you? Or do people kind of run away when you come around? Something to think about. The third point is sell to purpose. How many of you have ever thought about your purpose? And there's so many people now, because of the economy, people that, for example, and I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but people, for example, may have lost their job and they have more time at home. And what's happening is people are now thinking about family more, their purpose. Why am I here? Is working at this company really worth my time? I don't know how long I'm going to be at this company. So if you can relate your product to a purpose, you'll have increased sales. And for example, those of you that are in real estate, it's bigger than just selling a house. Just like when we bought our house in Corona 10 years ago, my wife called me and said, JaMarr, I found our house. I walked in there and I saw her face and she said, this is the one. I said, well, how do you know? She goes, because I can see us raising our daughter here. I can see her playing with the children outside. That's purpose. And the agent that worked with us said, I already know what you're looking for. Don't run on with me all day and night. I'll call you when I find something because I understand your purpose. And that's exactly what happened. And 10 years later, we're still in Corona. And we love this city.
We love you too.
Thank you. We love you too. I feel like I'm in college. We love you, man. All right. So what are some tips for management excellence, okay? Now, most managers, as we know, and if those of you, if you have your employees with you, you may not want to raise your hands at this point, but a lot of times most managers spend most of their time managing issues in their organization versus leading inspired teams and developing their teams. And there's a number of studies, and I cut this presentation way down, but there's one by the National Society of Training and Development which says 29% of a manager's time is spent on personality conflicts in the organization. Think about that. How much time are you spending managing issues? What did you want to spend that time leading inspired teams and going into a work environment where people feel good about themselves and are happy and they're content? And there's two main reasons for that. And it comes down to culture of the organization and communication within the organization. I'll touch on culture in a second, but it also comes down to how are people communicating within the organization? Do people understand each other? So here are a few tips from some of the literature. And there's a number of stories I could tell you about businesses that have made some changes in terms of their communication style with their employees, in terms of how they lead their teams. There's one example of a manager who I was hired to work with. He said, JaMarr, I feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose every single day. And he was doing so much work for his employees, working so hard in his business, and was frustrated every single day. So we did some work, and to make a long story short, it was a big turnaround in the business. And as a result, that turnaround, with his team going from second to last in the nation at this healthcare company to number one in the nation, was a $40 million swing for the business. And I forgot to mention, when I went from last in sales to number one, it was a $4 million swing in the business. Now, did I get that $4 million? No, I got a nice gold ring with a 0.1 carat diamond. But the point is, that is how this works. That's the power of what I'm talking about. So this was pretty straightforward. We all know this, right? Set clear expectations and accountabilities. Okay, every book says that. We know what that means, and that sounds fine and dandy. But there's one part you may not have thought about, and that is when you attract talent into your organization. And the more clear you are about what the organization is all about, what the expectations are, what the culture is, the more likely you are to attract the right fit for your business, because we all know the high cost when someone doesn't work out in your organization. You have to backfill that position, and there's people that talk and gossip and water cooler talk and the whole nine. The second one is invest in communication skills training. Now, it's interesting. A lot of large organizations, when things get tight in the business, what's the first thing they cut? Training, communication. What's the one thing they should probably invest more in? Training and communications. In smaller businesses, what happens? Oftentimes there isn't a budget set up for that type of training. And in business, it's all about the people that you hire and the decisions that they make. And they make those decisions based on who they're interacting with. And they interact through what? The C word, communication. So if we haven't invested in good communication skills, oftentimes that leads to problems in the business, like high turnover, low morale, and things of that nature. So if you have those symptoms, it might be because we haven't invested in good communication skills. Align individual vision and purpose to team vision and purpose. What does this mean? I said earlier that nowadays people are looking for more purpose in their lives. They're looking to go to work and have an experience that they believe they can take it home and it'll help them in their home life. And the idea of the separation between business and home life is kind of out the window because, as we all know, those of us that are married, we know that when we get home from work, what do? We tell our spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, or whatever the case may be, about our day. And if you have a bad day at home, what happens sometimes? We take it to work, and it affects our communication, our energy, and that type of thing. So if we can help our employees understand, which is what conscious capitalism is all about, friends of endearment, how to connect their individual vision and purpose. Helping them to understand by being engaged here at the office, it'll help them earn more money so they can send their child to college, so they can be able to buy a home, so they can be able to afford their wedding. And these are all the things that can happen if you look at combining individual purpose and passion with the corporate purpose and passion. And if those two get plugged in, it's amazing what can happen in your organizations. And the last thing is spend more time teaching people how to think than what to do. Historically, it's been you get hired by a company, you're told this is what you do, this is your job, do it, and we'll evaluate you in 6 months. Well, we all know that especially our frontline workers have an ability to think, and they see things every day, things that we don't see when we're upper management. When we're out trying to go and get business, they're there answering the phones, looking at the reports, talking to people. They're the best source of information. And so the idea here is to, when you spend more time teaching people how to think, for example, I worked with a company and they had some inside salespeople that worked with the sales team, and all they did was put together reports and send them on. Report, send it on. I said, well, they're the ones that look at the business every single day. They understand what's really happening. So I taught them how to think like a CEO, how to think like the business owner. And within one day, they caught an inventory issue where there was a $40,000 gap in inventory. $40,000 could be someone's salary. It could pay for a lot of different things. So those are some ideas about teaching people how to think. Lastly, before we close, I want to talk about corporate culture. And there's 3 things about culture that are important. And for those of you that have never experienced a corporate culture development process, it's really about your vision, your mission, and your values. Your vision is what you want your company to be. What do you want it to be known for? And in marketing, we call that positioning. What position do you want your company to have in the minds of your customers? The mission is, how are we going to do it? Through our people, our products, and our services. And the values are, what are going to be the guiding principles of our business? And so the question is for your organization, have you really developed your vision, mission, and values? Are they clear to everyone in the organization? Are they said, but not done? And I'll share this last story, and I'm going to wrap up. Worked with the largest eye care company in Southern California. They brought me in. They went from 1 office to 9 offices. Tremendous growth. However, they had low employee morale scores. The biggest issue was their patient satisfaction scores, which is becoming big in healthcare as well as in business, were 62%. 62% of their patients said they were satisfied with the service in their business. Your business is probably not going to do very well with those low patient satisfaction scores. And so upper management said, JaMarr, it's the employee's fault. We teach them to take initiative and to have drive and to take chances. I said, okay, well, let me talk to some of the employees. So I talked to the employees, and guess what they said? Well, JaMarr, that's what they say, but last week, Mary took a chance and got fired. So they were not doing what upper management thought they were doing. So there was a culture that was, this is what I say, but the reality is something different. So we had to bring that together and spend a lot of time on developing their vision, mission, and values, bringing people into the organization. And there was a complete turnaround in the success of this organization. Their patient satisfaction scores went from a 62% to 93% in 3 months. Now, there's some hidden benefits of that, which are what? More referrals. You think about social media and the communication when things aren't going well at a company, you hear it online. When things are going well, you don't hear it as much, but it's much better to have nothing said than something bad, right? So, you know this, right? So, just think about it. If the culture of your organization is in need of maybe a look at it to maybe see if there's something different we could do to help bring people together, that's something to think about. So what I wanted to do today was to share that with you. I wanted to talk about some of the changing theories in business in terms of all the literature. And, you know, I'm a big, well, not a fan of reality TV shows, but I like the concept of reality. And what I always tell people is I can't share things that I haven't experienced myself. And so when I talk, I want to be able to show you literature, show some data, and then provide real-world examples of the application of these theories that generated to results. And hopefully today you saw that in terms of sales, management, and building a culture of excellence, that the theory meets reality, which can help you make more money. Thank you all very much.